Tonight, we take a closer look at last week's Supreme Court ruling barring the state of New York from enforcing COVID-related attendance limits at churches and synagogues. In granting the request from the Diocese of Brooklyn and two Orthodox Jewish synagogues, the High Court's opinion reads in part, quote, "Even in a pandemic, the Constitution cannot be put away and forgotten. The restrictions at issue here, by effectively barring many from attending religious services, strike at the very heart of the First Amendment's guarantee of religious liberty." Andrea Picciotti, director of the Conscious Project, joins me now on Skype. Andrea, welcome back. Always so great to see you. I want to get your perspective on the action by the Supreme Court. How significant do you think it is, and what stands out to you from the justices' writings?
Well, Tracy, this is really a huge movement forward on behalf of the court in support of religious freedom, and especially at this time, very difficult time of the pandemic. It's a change, of course, because earlier this year, at the beginning of the pandemic, the court refused to issue such enforcement in cases brought in California and Nevada. And so seeing it happen in New York is really a great breath of fresh air. Couldn't have come at a more important time when we're giving thanks for all the blessings that we have.
Absolutely. You mentioned the cases brought by churches in California and Nevada. What do you think made the difference this time around, Andrea?
Well, Tracy, that's a great question. First and foremost, I think, is the change of the composition of the court. Justice Amy Coney Barrett is now joining the court, and she joined the majority in the New York order. She joined Justice Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh. The second is that the New York order, the Cuomo orders, as I like to call them, were particularly severe in restricting attendance in different areas of the state, and were very patently discriminatory against houses of worship, where they did allow other things like big box stores and bicycle repair shops to stay open without any kind of attendance limits. And the third is, like I mentioned earlier, we've been living through this pandemic for a while. We understand how to abate some of the transmission of the disease and to better treat people who are infected. And I think it was Neil Gorsuch who wrote a concurring opinion in this order where he said that the Constitution took a holiday early on in the pandemic, but it can't take a sabbatical.
Absolutely. The Supreme Court's ruling, however, we know is temporary. That being said, what happens next in this case?
Well, it does seem like it's going to be reviewed by the lower court of appeals on the merits and bring in more evidence. But the strength of the order that was written, a per curiam order by the Supreme Court, what really showed that there was although there's a compelling interest on behalf of the state to curb the spread of the coronavirus, there wasn't a narrow tailoring aspect to this order. It was overly harsh, overly discriminatory, allowed some secular entities to be open without limits, but did definitely put restrictions on houses of worship. So I think going forward, it's going to continue to enjoin these kinds of draconian orders. And at the same time, while we have clearly from the Supreme Court reinforced a religious freedom right, we do have a responsibility. So we need to follow the guidance of our health officials. We need to follow those three W's: wash your hands, wear a mask, and watch your distance. And at the same time, we need to continue to pray for the end of this pandemic and enjoy the blessings that we have in being able to gather and worship and adore our Lord as we enter into Advent.
Absolutely. Great advice, Andrea, and thanks so much for your insight. We always appreciate it. Andrea Picciotti, director of the Conscious Project. Thanks again.
Thanks, Trace.